we learned a lot through that experience, how to handle rejection on the phone, but also how to work really hard without anything coming back, but just the faith in that, in the outcome. So it did take a long time. So that 33K was really just paying back what we'd already spent. And then there was a little bit on top, but it
Yeah.
just went right back into marketing. So
That's great. That's great. Before I ask you, how you graduated from wholesaling to single family to multifamily to commercial, I want to talk about maybe some sacrifices that you all had to make. 17 years old and 20 years old. It's college time, it's party time, you're graduating high school, but I'm sure you three, including Kerwin, who's not on the call with us today, had to approach things a little differently. You had to prioritize things a little differently. So, Jeff, you start this one off. Talk about the sacrifices you were making at 17 to focus on building a business.
yeah, so I was in school when we got started. I was at the University of North Carolina at Wilmington, and COVID hit my freshman year. So while I was still in school in class before they sent us home, I was cold calling in between classes. And obviously, being a full-time student, there just wasn't a lot of time for much else. So I was doing really well in school and was working. Eventually, when we got sent home, I decided to, if this summer goes well while we were doing the cold calling, I wasn't going to go back. That was my plan, was to just go full-time real estate. That was the path I wanted to take. So the number one sacrifice there was not finishing school at the time. I eventually went back and graduated, but at the time that was one of the sacrifices. You kind of have this faith in the outcome you're going. Everyone we were talking to was telling us to not do that, not drop out and things like that. So I think that was one of them. Secondly, thank God, like COVID hit and no one was doing anything at the time. Most people were just at home. So instead of playing video games or watching TV, watching Netflix, we were just working, watching YouTube videos. I started reading a lot of books. And it was interesting because you are able to go and dive deeper into what this might look like in the future, and that vision that you have for yourself in your future gets a little clearer when you can see it. So during that time too, we started going to conferences and networking events. And instead of maybe staying out late, I started going to bed a little earlier so I could wake up, cold call. And it became easy. I know it was a sacrifice. If I'm being honest, it wasn't ever something that I didn't really want to do. So it felt pretty easy to do it. And then I also was in this growth period where maybe I was going from my adolescence into my adulthood. And obviously, there's always more that we can get more mature on and things like that. But I was really starting to break down maybe the things I was doing when I was younger, going to sleep late, eating junk food. I started cleaning those things up. So I'd say the sacrifice piece was there for sure. We spent a ton of time. As I said, we went like 3 months at one point without hanging out with our friends, which I don't recommend. I don't think that's healthy. It's probably not wise, but that was one of the things we just did. We just didn't see anyone that we worked. And God has a way of giving you certain things. Maybe we overdid it in that season, but we definitely learned things like how to work extremely hard, how to cold call, how to handle rejection, how to, we were reading, so I was just compounding so many different things every single day. So I think that had to play a role in where we are right now.
A little different question for you, Ken, since you are the oldest. So maybe you can talk about leading by example and accountability for the three of you. So how did you approach that?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. You know, since the beginning, my brothers have just been willing to just go with whatever I throw at them, which is kind of funny, because there's a lot of times I bring things up and I'm essentially the visionary within the group. So a lot of the ideas I come up with, sometimes they don't make sense. And this is one of those times where, we all saw a vision that quite frankly did not make sense at the time. And just bringing it up and then committing to it, I think is one way that I tend to just try to show that we can do things, and that's been a recurring theme just across our journey. In the beginning, it was kind of all of us taking action together. Um, First, at first we kind of all thought it was a scam, even myself. But after I did, deeper research, found, oh, like this is a real business. So just starting to send them podcasts like, hey, look at this guy, he made 20,000. Look at this guy, he made, X amount on their first deal. Like, this is something we can really do. And then from there, I guess just being willing to work and put in, the hours of cold calling and just leading by doing is something I guess kind of helps in that moment at the beginning, when there's, you don't have any outcome. You just put in work without any gratification. Um, that's really how this all came about, and how I guess at the beginning I was more so leading in that way.
I love that. And I can hear and relate to the faith piece. You're putting in the work with no outcome, but and you trust your path, right? But from there, wholesaling, I
Yeah.
know you all have done a lot of acquisitions, fix and flips. So um, you can choose who wants to answer this question, Ken or Jeff, but if you could just summarize your track record in any way from that first wholesale all the way, what is it? You said you were 17, you're 25 now. So 5, 6, 7, 8 years later almost. So let's
Mhm.
summarize your track record in however long you want.
Yeah, I can start getting. So once we got started with the wholesaling, we did maybe 15 wholesale deals in the span of 12 to 18 months. You learn a lot by doing that, of course. You're underwriting projects from the perspective of an end buyer, but also you're learning sales, things like that. You're learning different markets. So this is all in North Carolina that we were doing that in. We pivoted into something called creative financing, which is a fancy word for owner financing. And then there's another thing that we did called subject to. We joined a mastermind group for that, and we learned how we were already on the phone with the same potential sellers, where we were trying to wholesale those deals. We pivoted to also be able to offer owner financing. Our goal was to start acquiring and building wealth as soon as possible, because that's what people do in real estate, and that's why we got into this. So we didn't have any money. As I mentioned, we grew up with no money. So trying to get creative and how we could get our hands on assets was the goal from day one. So that's what led us to do that. We got, I think, what, 3 or 4 of those in the span of a year, which is we're on great terms, and we still own a few today. Then we pivoted into multifamily in 21, and that's when we joined a different mastermind group, learned how to syndicate properties. We got active in a few projects there, and then once the market took a turn back in 22, tail end of 22, and then in the beginning of 23, we pivoted into fix and flips.